Ladies and gentlemen, coming to the stage, Judy Sima.
Let's give Satori a hand for all she does. It was 6:30 in the morning, August 30th, 1995. I was just about to put breakfast on the table when the telephone rang. It was the nursing home where my mother spent the last 9 years of her life. The voice on the other end said, "Hello, this is Cambridge South Nursing Home. I'm sorry to inform you that your mother passed away last night. We've called the funeral home and they'll come and pick up her body later this morning, and you can come whenever you get a chance to pick up her things." Felt like the breath was taken out of my lungs. I sat down in the chair. I couldn't cry. I was just numb. She seemed so alert yesterday when I saw her. Did I kiss her goodbye? Did I tell her I loved her? I couldn't remember. Now I'll never be able to say how proud I am to have been her daughter, how much I loved her. I made the necessary phone calls, and then the tears started. The next day, I went to the nursing home to pick up her things. There was a new woman at the reception desk, and I went up to the desk and I said, "I'm here to pick up Elsa Erlebacher's things." The woman reached behind her and pulled out a big black plastic garbage bag and handed it to me. Inside were my mother's clothes, her toothbrush, her hairbrush, a few family photos. I took the bag and I began to leave the nursing home for the last time. And as I did, I passed my mother's room. There was somebody already sitting in her chair. It hadn't been a day, and there was somebody already using her room. I passed the calendar where they put all the monthly events, and I remembered I was there the last time telling stories to the residents. My mother and I, we stand in front of that calendar, and I point to my name, and I say to my mom, "Do you know who that is?" Mom looks at me. She looks at the calendar, she looks back at me, and then she points at me. She remembers who I am. At least at that time she did. I leave the nursing home, I push open the big glass doors, and I pass the Cambridge South Nursing Center sign that's surrounded by marigolds, and I make my way to the car. I put the garbage bag in the back seat, and as I turn on the motor, I think about those people in the nursing home. They don't know my mother. I'm angry and I'm unhappy about it. They don't know anything about her. They don't know that my mother, at 26 years old, took my grandfather's World War I German war medals and went to the Gestapo and got them to release my grandfather from concentration camp. She was only 26 years old. They don't know that my mother had to leave her parents and her younger brother behind in Nazi Germany. She never saw them again. She never even found out what happened to them. I drive the couple of blocks to my home and I think, I'm going to write them a letter. I want them to know who my mother really was. I get out of the car and I go downstairs to my cave, my office in the dark basement. I turn on the computer and I bring up WordPerfect and I start to write. Dear Cambridge South staff, my mother, Elsa Mossback Erlebacher, was born on January 5th, 1912 in Beuthen, Germany. You may remember her as a sweet little old lady with dark hair and who liked to push the other residents around in their wheelchairs. But I want you to know my mother the way I knew her. I want you to know who she really was. I tell them first about her encounter with the Gestapo and how she had to leave Germany. And then I start to remember. I remember when I was a little girl. My family would go every Saturday to the synagogue. My father always sits in the front with the other men. My mother, my sister, and I, we sit in the back with the women. My mother's beautiful voice sings all the Hebrew prayers. And then we sit down, and it seems like the services go on forever. My sister sits on one side of my mother, I sit on the other. My mother opens up the Hebrew Bible, and she begins to read stories to us. Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, Moses and the Israelites. I'm grown up now and I have children of my own, and every time I go to the synagogue, I open up the book, and there are no stories there. And I realize my mother told us those stories. My mother was my first storyteller. My mother is the reason I am a storyteller. When I was a little girl, my parents got us a puppy. We called him Sprinkle, because every time you pick up Sprinkle, that's what he did. But Sprinkle ran out in the street and was hit by a car, and Mom insists that I go to confront the man who killed my dog. For every birthday after that, I beg my mother for a dog, but my mother doesn't want to have to deal with another animal, and she says no. But on my 12th birthday, my mother insists that my sister and I get in her car. We're going somewhere near downtown Detroit. I don't want to go. I'm 12 years old. I can stay home by myself. But my mother insists, and so I sit in the back seat, and I position myself just so she can see my face in the rearview mirror. We drive for a long time, and we stop in front of a yellow brick building, the Michigan Humane Society. I got my dog, and when I forget to feed Petey, my mom feeds him. I'm 12 years old, and Mom is showing me how to sew hems on her customers' dresses. We're in her sewing room. She's always in her sewing room. Bach, Beethoven, and Tchaikovsky is playing on the old Philco radio in her sewing room. Mom loves classical music. I like Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley, but Mom says they sound like screeching cats. As I try to sew those tiny stitches that she's shown me how to sew, I get the thread all tangled. And my mom says, "Lange Fädchen, faule Mädchen, long thread, lazy maiden." So I rethread the needle and I try again, a little bit harder this time. And as we're sitting companionably sewing, I say to Mom, "Mom, tell me what happened when you met Daddy." And my mom said, "I bit him." I said, "You bit him? What do you mean you bit him?" "Well, Tante Erna invited me to come and visit her in Cologne, where your daddy lived, and even though Daddy was already engaged to someone else, she thought we would like each other. And so we went to the sports club where your daddy was a champion swimmer. He pushed me under the water, so I bit him." "Mom," I say, "that must have been love at first bite." And then she asks me, "Did I ever tell you about the fruit salad?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, you know, when your daddy and I came to this country, we didn't speak any English and we didn't have any money, so we worked for the Friedmans. I took care of the kids and I cleaned the house, and I cleaned and I took care of the kids, and your daddy, he sold newspapers in the subway station. And one night Mrs. Friedman was having company for dinner, and she wanted me to make a fruit salad. So I put some apples and oranges in a bowl, and then there was a can of pineapple on the shelf, and next to it was something that we didn't have in Germany, and my English wasn't very good, but it sounded okay. It said sweet. I said, "Mom, what was it?" "Well, I put it in the fruit salad, and nobody ate it." And I said, "Mom, what did you put in the fruit salad?" She said, "Candied sweet potatoes." I laughed too, and I said, "Mom, but you make the best sweet potato casserole on Thanksgiving." And Mom said, "Well, when I learned English, I found a good recipe in the cookbook." I'm 15, and I met this boy in summer school swim class. I like Jerry a lot, and we go out a lot. And one night I come home late, and my hair is disheveled, and my lipstick is all smeared. Daddy's already sleeping, and Mom is waiting for me in the living room. When I come into the living room, Mom says, "Did you have a good time this night? Did you have a good time tonight?" And I said, "Oh yes, I had a really good time." She said, "Judy, remember, nice girls don't." She didn't have to finish the sentence. I knew exactly what she meant. I was never late again. Mom was a terrific cook. When I got married, I had to invite my mom and my in-laws, and I had my first dinner party, and I cooked all day long, and I cleaned the house, and then I burned the zucchini, stuffed zucchini. And I said, Mom, you're able to run around all day and has dinner for 12 people. Am I ever going to be as organized and as confident as you are? And Mom said, eventually you will be. And I am a lot like my mother. I run around and I'm doing all kinds of things. And there's another saying that my mother uses, and it haunts me to this day. Mit einem Toches, du kannst nicht misweit Hochzeit zu setzen. With one rear end, you can't sit at 2 weddings. The night my father died, my sister and I were sitting in the living room, waiting for my mother to come home from the hospital. She comes in the door and she puts her arms around me and puts her arms around us, and she says, Daddy's dead. He was hit by a car. We cry. We don't know what to do. How are we going to live without him? How are we going to manage? What are we going to do? Mom kind of squares her shoulders and said, we're going to get through this. Gam ze yavor, this too shall pass. And my mom insists that I go on my senior trip with my friends to Washington, D.C. And the next fall, she insists and makes sure that I go to college to become a teacher. When I'm about to graduate from college with my teaching certificate, I go on my first teaching interview. And I'm not supposed to look at my Wayne State University credential file. It's highly confidential. You've had that too, I can tell. But I open it anyway. And my critic teacher, she's given me a C. She says I'm not made for teaching. I'm not teaching material. I come home, I'm devastated. What am I going to do? My whole life has been preparing for a teacher. What am I going to do? And Mom says to me, this too shall pass. One day you'll look back at this and laugh. I say, I doubt it. But then Mom says, you're going to graduate. You're going to get your teaching certificate. And then you should go to grad school in the fall and become a school librarian. It was the best advice I ever got. I love being a librarian. I'm a really good middle school librarian. I love my job. When my first child was born, Mom was there waiting for us at home to see her first grandchild. I hand Jennifer to her. Mom said, oh, no, wait a minute. And she sits down on my bed and takes a pillow from my bed and puts it on her lap and said, now you can hand me the baby. But Mom becomes an expert. She has 8 more grandchildren, and she's there for the birth of every one to help take care of them in Israel and in California. But she's not able to be there for the last one. She's already in the nursing home. As I finish the letter, I write, Dear Cambridge South staff, Elsa's story is not complete. If she touched your life, I would appreciate hearing a story or a memory from you. I never hear anything back from any of them. But I use that letter as the basis for the stories that I tell about my mother. I do research. I use my imagination. I find out that my mother's parents and my mother's brother were among the first Jews to be gassed in Auschwitz. I tell the story of my mother in first person as if I was my mother. I tell her story in schools and libraries, in women's groups, in churches, anywhere that anybody that'll hire me. I'd like to tell her story. Now, Alzheimer might have silenced her voice and eventually her life. But I take her stories and I tell them all over, and I'm proud to be able to tell the story of her escape from Germany during World War II and how she adjusted to life in America. And not only do I bring my mother back to life through her stories, I'm also able to let people know about the Holocaust and what happened to the Jews in Germany during World War II, in Germany and in Europe. I might not be able to see my mother, but I'm able to bring her life. I'm able to bring her to life. I remember her stories, her optimism, her sayings, and now I've become my mother's voice, just without the German accent. Thank you.
Judy Sima.